What's up, everyone? I'm John. This is the Cartoons That Curse podcast.
Tariq, Tunerific Tariq. You may know me, you may not, but that is cool. And here we talk about adult animation season by season, starting with the Fox seasons of Futurama.
That's right. Fox seasons of Futurama. You might know us from YouTube. I'm Johnny Tuchillos. As he said, he's Tunerific Tariq. We both talk about a lot of cartoons that we like. I started watching Tariq's stuff because of a Family Guy video he made that was really good about Brian Wallows and Peter Swallows. It's a whole tongue twister right there. But yeah, man, we like connected over adult animation. It was like, hey, let's talk about it in podcast form.
Yeah, we both. That's how we met, because I didn't even know that the Brian Wallows one was the first one you saw. The first thing I saw of yours was the King of the Hill thing, where you when like everybody was in outrage because they thought Hank Hill would vote for Trump, and I kept screaming no. But you did your video, and it has so many great examples of his character. I was like, this guy is all right. Like this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we kind of instantly started to bond over a lot of these adult animated cartoons. This was like less than a year ago. And now we're just friends. And we talk about cartoons all the time. We're like, we should do this and record it while we do it. So Here we are. Yeah. But we're really excited to talk about cartoons with you. How about we just like cue the theme song?
Wait, we have a theme song?
I've been watching them for years. It's always been something that fit with all the animated characters that's doing their own bits. With a fry who's in the future and a Family Guy that sucks. With a father from a hill, a burger family runs them up. The show inspires is the same guy, except he totally say and diverse.
Let's watch cartoons that curse.
Yeah, that's bananas.
That's rough.
So Futurama, I guess we should talk about how it started. In the 90s, early 90s, The Simpsons was a huge success, obviously. One of the most popular shows of all time. Fox wanted another one, because why wouldn't they? Right. So they went to Matt Groening and said, hey, make us a new show. So Matt hired David Cohen, who was a writer on The Simpsons. He kind of got his start on Beavis and Butthead and The Simpsons. And they developed the show for like 2 years, pitched it in 1998, and they sold it for like a 13-episode first season. It's funny. I watched kind of a featurette about the creation of Futurama that came out right before the show came out. And, I love Matt Groening, but he was like hilariously arrogant in the clip where he was just like, what we've done with The Simpsons, how we've satirized the Modern Family. We're going to do that for sci-fi.
I think I've actually seen that before.
Yeah, I was like looking for some good juicy info, but it was just kind of like the basics.
Yeah, I seen years ago, man. I was like a kid. There was it might still be on YouTube. There was like a little doc series thing called My Wasted Life, and they did one on Matt Groening. And at the end of it, he pitches a show that he never ended up making. He ended up doing Disenchantment, but he didn't do the show that he pitched. He said, yeah, we satirized the modern American family, we satirized sci-fi, and next I think he said like some wild shit. He's like, next I think we're gonna do punk rock, which never happened. I don't know what he was doing.
Matt Groening feels like the least punk rock person I can think of too.
I wouldn't trust him to satirize my genre. Absolutely not.
That's hilarious. I mean, even reading up on some of the stuff when they were coming up with this show is funny. Like Futurama is obviously the perfect title. They nailed the title, but the only other there were two other titles I heard he pitched that were in the running, and one was called Doomsville, which
that sucks.
I don't know how that. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That sucks.
And the second one was Aloha Mars, which don't.
That sounds like an episode title.
It sounds like an episode title. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. I guess they kind of had some trouble working out the development of this show too, or at least not the development, but the early stages of writing with Fox. Obviously, Groening had complete control over The Simpsons. They didn't really have to answer to Fox that much in terms of creative control, but Fox wanted more creative control over Futurama than they had over The Simpsons. So that was like a big, headbutting point early on, but eventually they just seized the creative control and that wasn't an issue anymore, which is good, because who the hell knows
Right.
what the show would have been like without it.
Because you kind of hear about them with they used to. I've heard Seth MacFarlane say, like, offhandedly that, like, I guess because of James L. Brooks, they kind of let them do whatever they want over there, like on The Simpsons, because of like how big of a producer he is. And I know when Matt kind of just did Futurama without him, so I don't know. I think that might have been them trying to like reach their hand and like felt like they could probably finally get their hand in something that he was doing. But they didn't really have much to do with The Simpsons.
Yeah, they apparently had some major concerns over the first couple episodes, but we'll talk about that once we get into the bulk of the season. But a lot of the Futurama content kind of freaked them out. They were like, I don't know if this is what we wanted. But the show also has like one of the best casts in animated history.
Yeah.
So many good voices. Billy West does Fry, and the Professor and Zoidberg and Zapp Brannigan. John DiMaggio's Bender, Katie Seagal is Leela, Phil LaMarr is Hermes, Lauren Tom's Amy, Maurice LaMarche plays like a bunch of ancillary characters like Morbo and Kif. And then Tress MacNeille also. She's Mom and any kid they need in the show. But yeah, dang, what a stacked cast. It's crazy.
Stacked cast, and like I really love Futurama is one of those shows for me where I love them trying to figure out the voices more than when they actually developed. So I like how Billy West sounds when he's trying to figure Fry out. You know what I mean? Like I like that a lot. I like how he sounds in these earlier ones. Bender too, because he's not Bender. John DiMaggio is like phenomenal throughout the whole run, but like this kind of calmer, timid Bender with like insane insecurity, which I didn't realize he's really insecure early on.
That honestly, to a degree, I think that actually sticks throughout. Like he's definitely bombastic and he's like confident about certain things. It's like the whole like, shut up, baby, I know it, like that's like his attitude. But there's certain things that he's like he's very insecure about throughout the show. Like even in the infamous Jurassic Park episode, which everyone cries watching. Even the whole premise of that for Bender is that he's upset that Fry isn't spending time with him. He's like going to have his dog back or whatever. So like that kind of actually sticks around through the show, which is interesting. They just kind of portray it a little differently as they go on.
Yeah, I guess I never realized it. Like I always, when you think of Bender, you do think of like, oh, shut up, baby. I know, like, that kind of thing. That's what I always kind of internalize when I think of him. But here it was just like, man, I don't remember what episode it was. It's crazy. It was literally today. It was the Titanic one. It was A Flight to Remember. And he's like, if I die, tell him that I'm like I died robbing somebody or something like that. And then Fry says like, I'll say that you were like taking like a wedding ring off a guy's like dying hand. And he just kind of hugs Fry and says, I love you, buddy. It's like, oh, it's so sweet.
It's super sweet. That's another thing that I think they did a pretty good job early on, especially just if you look at the first 3 episodes. Each of those first 3 episodes have like a pretty sweet, heartwarming moment at the back end. And that's not a thing that they necessarily did throughout every episode, but it's something that they did well when they did it later in the show. Like obviously there's a lot of heartstring tuggy moments throughout Futurama. And you can kind of see the like seeds for that planet even just in the first few episodes, which is cool.
Yeah. I was because I watched a lot of these like with Man of a Thousand Thoughts, and I just kept saying like watching the first, especially like the first like 3 or 4, I just kept like, they're planting so many seeds. Like so much of this stuff comes back, and it was really putting in perspective for me how genius the show is, and how it figures itself out like immediately, right? Like there's only a couple things that I saw I'm like, they probably wouldn't do that again. But other than that, it's really, they knew what they were doing. It's really focused, and like Okay, you're the Futurama expert, so I thought I would ask this. This might just be like leftover thoughts from when I was a kid. So obviously, we find out way later in the show's run that the reason Fry is in the future is because of Nibbler.
Right.
So has his shadow always been there, or did they add that later? It's always been there.
I don't think they knew exactly what they were going to do when they put it there, but I think they had like ideas. I think they were like, we want to plant some little hints and seeds early on, just so that we can kind of go back and point and be like, see, this was our plan the whole time. So,
oh my God. How did they, it's so good. Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
Honestly, I didn't want to get too deep into like other shows, but that's also kind of the thing that I'm growing to love about Disenchantment right now, which is a show that I think isn't not nearly as loved as The Simpsons or Futurama. And I don't find it quite as funny as those shows, but they are like jam packing those things with these tiny little hints and details that are just in the animation. And they're starting to come back, and you're starting to be like, wow, that was something that they hinted at here. Okay. Here's something they hinted at here. And it's becoming a really fun show to speculate about. And I feel like that's what they latched onto from the fan base of Futurama, being like so invested in those ongoing mysteries and digging through every frame of the show to like find out what they have planned. Which I think is cool. I think that's a fun way to make a show. So yeah, nah, absolutely.
I remember, well, I dropped my phone. I remember when Disenchantment first came out, I was like, I never finished it because I kept teetering and struggling to figure out if I liked it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way.
Yeah, until I just kind of stopped. I always kind of told myself I would go back to see what was going on. Because a lot of people, a lot of people I trust like it. You like it. A couple of my friends from college like it. So I'm like, I should probably try again. I just haven't found it. So
I was kind of on the fence about it through the first two parts. Like there was always things about it I loved, and other things about it I didn't love. And so like one of the things that bothered me was like, I felt like, well, if you're doing this on Netflix and you got this cool fantasy world and you're like dabbling in serialized storytelling, why aren't you embracing serialized storytelling? And the first two seasons feel like, oh, there's a couple serialized episodes, and then there's a bunch of episodic episodes, and then the back end, there's a couple more serialized episodes. But part 3 of Disenchantment really jumped back into the serialization, which I really appreciated. And I think I'm really excited for the show moving forward. But yeah, you know, that's not Futurama, I guess. We should get back to Futurama. Yeah, but it's good. Disenchantment's good. I like it. But back to the like kind of pouring over details of the fans thing. One of the crazy things about the pilot was that this is kind of speaks to how dedicated and obsessed the fans were from day one. They put in that first episode one tiny Rosetta Stone for like the ancient or the alien language that they put in the show.
Is it the Alienese? Is it the Slurm?
It's the Slurm sign.
Okay, because when we were watching it, I was like, why is that standing out so much? I feel like I'm supposed to pay attention to that.
So what they did is like earlier in the episode, there's a billboard that has the same design that says "Drink Slurm," and then that's the same design. And so basically, you find out that those letters, you realize that they spell drink because that's what it said on the other thing. So people use that as the little Rosetta Stone, and then later in the episode, there was a piece of graffiti that's got like that's got the language on it. And so people just put in the couple of letters from Drink Slurm that were in it, which I think is maybe only 1 or 2 letters. And they still somehow figured out what the graffiti said. And they pretty much nailed the entire alien alphabet within, I think David X. Cohen said within an hour of the show airing, they had figured it out. Yeah, that's bananas.
That's rough.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but I guess they had some real like code crackers in the fan base already. But I guess we should talk about the pilot, written by Matt Groening and David Cohen. How do you feel about this pilot? Like, it's, pilots are hard a lot of the time, but how do you feel about Futurama's pilot?
I think Futurama's pilot is brilliant. And you know what it is when watching it, we only spend like, it's barely a minute. We barely spend a minute in 1999, but they tell us everything we need to know. That's the first thing that stood out to me. Like when I was watching it, I'm like, we know Fry, we know how his life's going, we know how he feels about it, and they tell us all of that in such that short amount of time. And they know it's because we're tuning into the future show. We want to see the future. We want to see this future that you guys are presenting for us. But they don't. We don't feel like we're getting like cheated out of Fry's character. We don't feel like we're just getting thrown into it. And it's like a masterclass at that. I've never seen anything like it. Just how dense it is. It's really super dense. Only thing about it, I remember when I was a kid. I think it might be on one of the DVDs or something. There was the original script to the pilot.
That's on the DVD, yeah.
There was one joke that I still remember that I wish they kept that's not there. It's Fry's like walking down the street and he's like, oh my God, it's the future. And then like a car comes and almost hits him. And he says, oh shit. And then it said like title sequence. And then afterwards he says it, like he finishes it.
I remember that. I bet that was a Fox note. I bet they didn't want to start their show off
that's how I read it.
Shit.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
That's a great joke though. You're totally right though. Like this pilot is so damn good because it is so that's all in the cold open. That's how damn efficient it is. That's not even the first act of the show. That's before the titles of the show. And we know where Fry is in his life. Yeah, exactly what you said, how he feels about it. And it's all done through like 5 lines of dialogue max. Like they just do mostly showing, a little bit of telling. And by the end of the cold open, we're in the future with a pretty good understanding of our main character already, which is really impressive. And actually, not to keep bringing it back to Disenchantment, but that was kind of an issue I had with Disenchantment, was how slow it was for that pilot to get into those characters. Like
it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, like, and I guess they had the runway to do it because they're on a streaming service, so maybe that was a conscious choice. But you know, in Futurama, our main trio is together by the midway point of the episode. We've met them all by like the 7-minute point of the episode. We've met all 3 of those guys. With Disenchantment, they don't meet each other until like I swear it's like the 25-minute mark, like longer than this episode isn't until they meet each other. I mean, I guess that's kind of the old thing is like sometimes the constraints actually help you think more creatively and tell a better story.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because from what I remember from Disenchantment was they kind of, it kind of has like, I guess for lack of a better term, it kind of has like film pacing. Because they're trying to, because you can tell that they know that they have a lot of space to work with, right? So they kind of let you feel that space. So it's kind of bigger, I guess. Like Futurama's pilot is really, really dense. Like it's really not a single thing is wasted. If it's not telling a story or planting a seed for way later, it's like it's a moment that's meant to make you laugh. And even then, I think they do a brilliant job of hiding stuff in jokes, like hiding stuff that will come back later, like in jokes. They do that a lot. Like even when we were watching it and I forgot who said it. Someone was like, why is Leonard Nimoy in the middle when they go in the museum?
Yeah.
And then I laughed and I thought about it. I'm like, wait, wasn't there like a Star Trek religion? That might be why he's in the middle. I don't know. If you think about a lot of that stuff, it like makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I think that's what I remember from Disenchantment though, is that they just they did like a little like more. They tried to give you more time with the characters, but in that, it kind of breaks you apart from them, right? Because you're just kind of, you like, I know there's a trio and I'm waiting for the trio to get together.
Right.
I haven't seen them yet, kind of thing.
Yeah. Elfo's whole story starts in a completely separate place and he has a whole adventure before he meets the trio.
Right.
Whereas with Futurama, you know, Fry wakes up from the tube, immediately meets Leela, As soon as he leaves Leela, he meets Bender, and then they all meet up again in the middle of the episode. It's like, it's really dense. It's really concise. And I know obviously that has to do with the time it was made and the platform for which it was made. But I don't know. I just think when you're doing a pilot episode, the faster you hook me with these things, the better. And Futurama did it so fast.
And even just like throughout, right? Like throughout the whole season, it's like they just kind of, I think the first 4 or 5 is just like introing you to staple characters, like, and they do it like really, really smartly. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of jumping around, but like in the second one in particular, I really like, it was just like they're introducing Amy and Hermes and Zoidberg, and they do it through not only, but that's the thing though that makes Futurama so dope, is that like we're learning the future through Fry, right? But we're learning the rest of the characters, not just through Fry, but through Leela and Bender too, because they just started working there too. They don't know anybody either. So not all of our interactions with everyone comes from Fry. Like, I think the first character to actually interact with Hermes is Leela, because she's the one signing the thing when they're like, okay, we need a captain and everything like that, and she's the only one taking initiative. Like, I think that keeps it fresh. Like, akin from other shows where I know a lot of people's problems sometimes is that like, it might just feel like the main character is only there so things can be explained to them and so they can be explained to us and everything like that. I think they do a nice balance with that.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job, like naturally implementing these characters' like place in the show through the eyes of the characters without making it feel like it's just expository. And yeah, that's especially that first intro. I mean, I guess like they do kind of go Hermes and Amy, here's what they do, but like you still get a sense of who they are and what their purpose is within the company there. And then especially like the way they introduce Zoidberg is perfect, because they're like, well, you're a new crewmate. You need to go get your physical from the doctor. Right. And that's one of the funniest introductions ever, where Zoidberg just doesn't even understand human anatomy.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, open your mouth. And Fry does it. He's like, no, your other one. He's like, I only have one. He's like, really? And he just pulls a card out. What are you looking at? Yeah. What does the card say?
It's just this little cheat sheet. That's so funny. I think there's another one. I can't remember. Was it this episode or was it maybe another episode where this might be later down the line, but where he like confuses Fry for Bender. He's like, oh, I thought you were the robot.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know the difference between a robot and a person.
I forget which one. It's the first season. It's just later in the run. I forget which one it is because I just watched it. But,
right.
Yeah.
It all blends together. Yeah.
Right.
Man, yeah, they like, it's a good writing staff, and they like really, I think even from both a writing and even an animation standpoint, like it looks a little rougher than the later seasons, but not compared to some of these other shows like Simpsons first season or Family Guy first season. There's such a disparity in animation quality between the first and second season, or at least style. Like it looks super different. Right. But Futurama is pretty close. There's some things you notice here and there, but it was pretty close to the style they stuck with the whole time.
Yeah. The drawings are a lot looser, which just kind of happens. It happens with like any animated show. But one thing I notice is, because, like they didn't invent CG on TV or anything like that, but they kind of had they were still figuring out to do they were doing stuff that hadn't been done yet, right? Like cell shading the ship and like all that kind of stuff. And I was noticing, especially in A Flight to Remember, when they do CG shots of like Bender, right? They built Bender in a way to where you can CG him and it just doesn't look off-putting in the slightest. Like he remains his exact form like, and it looks fine. Like they do it a couple of times. I know they do it too in the series is landed. Like, and it's
Right,
seamless.
when he's on the magnet.
Yeah, and it's insane to see that it still looks good. Like if that would have aired today, I wouldn't even like blink. Like it would just be exactly the same.
That's the crazy thing I noticed on this watch through, because I feel like I apparently just didn't give the show enough credit for how many 3D assets they implemented, because I always knew they used 3D earlier than a lot of other shows. And I always felt like I noticed, like, I feel like you can tell when it's a character, like when it's Bender there. I think Flight to Remember is one in particular, like you said, where you really notice how many 3D assets there are, because the entire Titanic is 3D. A lot of that space stuff is 3D. They have a 3D model for Bender and the Countess. Like when they're parodying the Titanic shot, they're like, that whole thing is 3D. And so like whenever I was thinking about their use of 3D, I was thinking about stuff like that, where I'm like, oh, this looks really good, but I can tell it's 3D. But this time watching through, I was watching with commentary and they were pointing out how many of these things were 3D. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that most of these things were 3D. They're that well implemented. And I definitely didn't give the show enough credit for how well they implemented the 3D assets that early on in the show. Cause I only ever thought of the ones that I could tell. I was like, oh yeah, that's 3D and it looks really good. But there's things like in the Hell is Other Robots, just the simple thing of like when Bender and the Robot Devil are moving on the minecart, there's a background that's moving that's fully 3D. And I never would have guessed that it was 3D, but it's another 3D asset they use. So they did like really smart uses of 3D early on in this show as well. To the point where I'm sure there's not a single person who could watch through the show and like pick out every single 3D asset because they're so well implemented. It's impressive. It's really impressive.
Yeah, because it's cleverly weaving into the style. Like when you look at it, it at a certain point it stops becoming like, okay, that's a 3D asset, and it starts to just become, okay, this is just how Futurama looks. Like this is like this is the style of the show. Like this is what I expect from it. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think they like to be that early and like, cause there's stuff that comes out later, right? That like looks way worse.
Totally. The funny thing is, even, I mean, I'm going to keep bringing it back to Disenchantment, but there was a thing I praised in my latest review for Disenchantment Part 3, because they did a whole character on a motorcycle as a 3D asset. And I could tell, but I was like really impressed with the cell shading they did on like this full character. And it's not like a robot character like Bender. It's like a human character, which is harder to do in the 3D model when you're blending it with 2D. And I still think it's really impressive. But I kind of hyped it up as like, this is the best use of 3D, 2D blending I've ever seen. And now watching this early Futurama stuff, I'm like, wait a second. I didn't even know this was 3D. I was totally off base here. Like, this is the best use of it I've ever seen. Yeah, it's funny. Funny how your perspective shifts.
Yeah, I got to see that clip you're talking about.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's interesting. It like you can tell, but it's also like it's a trip. It's really weird. It's a full character on a motorcycle the whole time. Yeah, that pilot is so good. I think one of the things I love about that pilot also is not only just the way they establish not only the characters in the world, but like they also plant those little seeds for Fry and Leela early on, where like they bond over their shared loneliness. They have a different kind of loneliness. And that's kind of those like heartfelt moments I was talking about that you find in those first 3 episodes is that at the end, Fry's just kind of like, I give up. Like, if you want me to be delivery boy, I'll just be a loser in the 30th century too. And he's like, and Leela kind of recognizes like, wow, he is all alone here, but so am I. Like, you're not really alone because I'm alone too. And she gives her whole backstory, and you all of a sudden know more about Leela. And it's just like, it's just smart to have them have something that they can bond over, and that brings them all together, and kind of moves the show forward. It was good writing, good writing.
Yeah, it's all sandwiched together really, really well. Because they kind of give Leela an arc like under your nose, and you don't really realize it until it comes together at that point.
Right. that she
where they both
realizes she's
kinda-
not happy with her life either.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you
Yeah.
get they give you the scene of her like talking to her boss, and he kind of points at the poster in the back, and it's a gag, but you realize like, oh yeah, she must feel the exact same way about this, and
Totally.
yeah, and I remember she has the ring, and then Bender steals it, and I know that's the gag to just show you what kind of guy he is, but I still was like, what ring is that?
Yeah, it's true. That's true. It was just for the gag, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, great pilot, really well done, establishes all those characters super well, and like and I think that actually the first 3 episodes of the series do such a good job moving every character forward in like a really natural, understandable way that both like shows, and they all show what the show can do, and also just move the characters forward like naturally, and you know, introduce all the new characters and everything. But the series has landed, obviously introduces all these new characters, but then shows kind of the like, oh, here's some of the cool future stuff we're gonna do. There's a theme park on the moon. Let's go. You know, they don't go too far from Earth, but they go far enough to be like, hey, like this is going to be weird. There's like robot Hicks on the moon who farm oxygen or whatever. And there's alligators with space helmets on.
Right. which they're running from, which is kind of like it can't bite you. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It's got the helmet on. It's not going to bite you.
Yeah.
It's still funny though. It's a good gag.
Man, I love that episode, man. It's one of my favorite, and it's one of my favorites in the whole show.
The series has landed.
Yeah, I love that episode. So it's so funny, and it has one of my favorite jokes in it, right? But I feel like it's only one of my favorite jokes because I grew up with what it was making fun of. There's another episode that's like that too, but like I grew up with the Honeymooners. So when they do the whole like bang zoom straight to the moon thing, it cracks my shit up every time I hear it. It's so funny.
I like how blunt Fry is about explaining to them what it really means.
Yeah, because that's like because you know I watched the Honeymooners as a kid. I didn't like. I guess I understood what it meant, but hearing Fry say like he was just using it just like a metaphor, it's like, oh shit, I guess that is what he was doing.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. I love the way that they have him deliver it, because like obviously in the Honeymooners, it's like always an angry thing, but he's like, one of these days, bang, zoom, straight to the moon. It's so funny. I think one of the things I love most about that episode is it's super funny, and I really like the theme park stuff, but I think of these first 3 episodes when I'm talking about those like kind of heartfelt moments at the end. Fry and Leela in the lunar lander and like looking at Earth. I love that moment so much. It's so nice and so sweet, especially because this whole time you kind of have it kind of feels like Leela has been looking at Fry like this child who's just like, you know, who's experiencing some new thing for the first time. And then just in that moment, she finally understands what the moon was and is to Fry as someone who, you know, has never been able to go to the moon, has only been able to look at it from the Earth. And it's just not only is a really nice moment, but it's so well animated. It's just really beautifully framed. I love that.
You know what I like a lot about that moment too is that it's before they start to plant any romantic seeds, so it's completely platonic, right?
Totally.
And that's why I really like it, because it's really rare do you get moments like that, like platonically with just like characters that kind of like not only are they starting to see eye to eye, but they kind of have like a similar thing going on, just like in mindset. And I really appreciated that moment on the rewatch, because it's like they don't even play it to where they like look at each other and like maybe lean in for a kiss or anything like that. It's just a really nice moment. Like, totally. And there's a lot of those just in the show in general, but like that's one that stands out to me.
Yeah, sure. I think a lesser show would have been inclined to like lean into the romance there, but they were so smart to, obviously, I mean, I guess in A Flight to Remember they started to plant those romance seeds a little bit, but like there's so many moments before that of Fry and Leela just bonding as people before before developing any romantic feelings. And even in A Flight to Remember, like, it's all through a very contrived circumstance that they even start to think about anything romantic. So I think they build up to it really well and naturally over the course of the show.
Nah, definitely.
So the third episode, I Roommate, this is the episode that was apparently the one where the writers were like, okay, Fox, we'll do all your notes. We'll let you like have a little bit of creative control over this one. And like, because Fox was apparently really upset by like how scary Dr. Zoidberg was, and like the suicide booth thing freaked them out. And like all of these things, they're like, this is not what we thought. We thought we were getting Space Simpsons, but this is like really weird. And so I Roommate was apparently the one where they were like, let's bring it back down to earth. We don't need to like, let's make this a little more like modern feeling. Like it's just two guys trying to find an apartment. That's the premise of the show. And it's not any crazy space stuff. They're not going to Mars or anything. And they did all of these creative notes that Fox had. And in the end, Fox hated it. They thought it was the worst episode they had done. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I think it's a good episode, though.
I'm about to say that episode rocks, though. It's
really good. Yeah, it's funny how it kind of was born of like them needing to sort of cater to Fox's ideas, but they did such a good job working around those constraints that I think it's a really great episode.
Yeah, it has the same ending as Return in Japanese from King of the Hill.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
inside Bender's apartment is just like they finally like open the door.
Oh man, that's so funny. We'll definitely cover King of the Hill at some point.
For sure.
I just got my 13 season DVD set in the mail. I didn't know it was a thing.
How is that? Like, is it just like every season? Did it just come with like every season box
in a little
of each
tiny
season?
Box? And they're not even a box set anymore. Like I remember when I was younger, I had the first 2 seasons and it was like a full box and you had 4 little cases in it. And those little cases had each disc in it. This is just like your tiny DVD case. And I'm sure in the inside, it's just got the little pages. And,
that sucks.
And I think, yeah, it's garbage, but I just wanted to have hard copies of them. And I think also because they stopped producing they stopped putting the money into those DVD releases after like 4 seasons or whatever. I think starting with season 5 or 6, there's no special features at all, which is a bummer.
No
but
commentaries
I think the first few
at all?
seasons, yeah, I think the first few seasons have commentaries, but I think after that they don't. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Oh man,
that show deserved better than that.
That sucks.
Yeah,
I would have loved like a commentary on the last one or something.
Dude, same. Yeah, that would be great. Honestly, so many of these creators could just like start a Patreon and be like, we're going to make commentaries for the show and you can buy them separately.
I would eat that up. Are you serious?
Same, 100%. Oh man, we should put that in the universe. We should try to get someone to do that.
For sure. We can start sending DMs or do a Twitter post or something to see what happens.
Yeah.
Somebody bites.
Oh man, I did laugh because this is where they start making fun of New Jersey. Sorry, dude.
I was actually going to bring this. I'm glad you brought it up. There is 3 Jersey jabs in this season.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, because as a kid, I remember them, right? But like, I guess I never watched the show like in order, like this close together in order. So I was like, wait, what the hell are they doing? So there's that one. There's the one where they go to the perfect apartment. Like, it looks amazing. And he's like, all right, I give up. What's wrong with it? He said, there's nothing wrong with it. Although we technically are in New Jersey. It's just this hard cut to them. Just like, we can't find anything.
Yeah, I think the line is not one apartment that's even remotely livable. That's so, which is like so harsh.
I would, and it's weird because I guess I understand because I probably wouldn't want it either, but still.
Yeah, the commentary I did learn in the commentary though that David X. Cohen, co-creator of the show, he's from New Jersey, so it's a little bit of self-deprecation, I guess.
That sucks.
What's the other one?
The other one I remember, the garbage one. They're like, they're talking about all the places they dumped all the garbage, and like, yeah, we
New
even
Jersey
filled up New Jersey.
It's like, what the fuck? And then the other one, and then I think the last one is that in Hell and Hell is Other Robots, they put hell in New Jersey. They put hell itself in New Jersey.
And then Leela says like, well, actually, or something like that, and then they just kind of fall. So you don't even know I don't know where she was gonna take it with that.
Yeah, they didn't let up on New Jersey in this first season. It was a little bit rude.
It's rough.
iRoommate also introduces All My Circuits, which is one of my favorite things about Futurama is the fictional shows. They've got All My Circuits and The Scary Door, I think are both so funny. But one of the things I always wish they had done was just give me a full episode of All My Circuits. I would watch the hell out of that.
Same, honestly. And it's weird that they never did that because it's right there. It's right in front of you. Like you could, like it seems like such a golden idea. They do one of my favorite jokes in this one because when they're figuring out that the power goes out every time Bender comes through the door, and like Calculan's like my secret is, and then Bender comes in, interrupts it, and everybody freaks out. Bender storms out. And then he says, to reiterate, my secret is, what is he doing?
That's my favorite.
I love that.
It's so good. Man, yeah, just like the entire idea of a robot soap opera is so funny. Where you're just going through the motions of a ridiculous soap opera, but with robot themes. One of my favorites is when Fry starts watching it and he's just like, who's that guy? And Bender's like, oh, that's a human. Like, well, what does he do? He lives, he laughs, he learns. The human stuff. It's just, I like that the human has just been like really stereotypical to the point of like having no other personality besides being a human.
It's really good.
And this is also a good episode just for Fry and Bender's friendship. Like it's a good heartfelt ending at the end when
it's really sincere.
Even though they flip the roles as a joke where it's like it's Bender's really apologizing to Fry, which is really funny, but it's still a nice moment. It's really sweet.
It's really sincere, and I think like it just kind of works for them because it is a joke ending, but it is kind of like it does pacify you as an audience member. You don't feel like they're just kind of chickening out and going for the joke. Like, nah, it feels sincere for them, and Leela just kind of lets them have it. Like she's just kind of like,
totally,
you're right. Go ahead.
That is like a skill to simultaneously tell a good joke and make it a sincere, like emotional moment. That's pretty impressive. The fourth episode is a pretty fun one, but I think the best thing about it is that it introduces Zapp Brannigan, Love's Labor's Lost in Space.
Oh my God.
Zapp Brannigan. Before we start, I should tell, this is kind of a sad story, but I guess there's the whole Zapp Brannigan story with the show is that Zapp Brannigan was a role meant for Phil Hartman. And they basically were going to give it to him, but Phil insisted. He was like, no, let me audition. Like I want to go through the process like everyone else. And so he was one of the people to audition. He obviously nailed it. And that he auditioned for it literally just a couple weeks before his tragic death. And so one of the things they did is a lot of people think that Billy West kind of modeled his Zapp Brannigan after Phil Hartman, but really it was just the voice that he naturally was going to do. But it does feel like a nice kind of tribute to Phil Hartman because it feels like
that's how I always heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing that was really sweet that they did is that apparently they named Philip J. Fry after Phil Hartman.
Wow. Oh,
they didn't give him that name until that happened. So that's really sweet. I mean, that's just like one of the most tragic losses in voice acting history. Phil Hartman is like just a legend. And like, he's so good on SNL too. That guy would have had the longest, best career. And it's a damn shame, but I love Zap Brannigan because it kind of feels like an echo of Phil. Zap Brannigan's a funny character who's got those vibes like a Troy McClure type of character. So
yeah, absolutely. That's why I always kind of felt that Billy. I wouldn't say Billy was imitating Phil, but it kind of felt like a nice little echo thing.
I was listening to this is a couple years ago. I was listening to a Mark Maron interview with Billy West, and Billy West was talking about how Billy West got to start doing, like, I think he was on Howard Stern. He would do radio gags where he would just do different voices on Stern, and apparently Phil Hartman, who was like on SNL at the time, he's already made it big, like heard and was like very impressed by Billy's voice work. So he told the story of how like Phil Hartman just called him. He got his number through his agent or whatever, and they got in touch, and they would literally just sit on the phone and do voices to each other.
That's
which
really
is
funny.
Like, it's really funny, but it's also like, I guess if I was really good at voices and I loved other people who are good at voices, I would do that too. That's cool.
Yeah.
It kind of humanizes them a bit more,
Yeah. No, that's that's the equivalent to like me and you throwing Simpsons and Family Guy quotes back and forth on Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the voice acting equivalent to that.
Exactly. Yeah, they probably would have had a podcast together if you'd been still around.
Voicing cartoons like hers.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Do you have anything? I mean, Love's Labor's Lost in Space is pretty good, but I don't know. It's like, do you have much to say about it? I guess it introduces Nibbler. That's pretty big. Kind of.
It does. I always forget that it does, but it definitely does. It has. That's what I'm noticing. Like as we go through all of these episodes, one of them, they always have one line that like I've always internalized. It's like one of my favorite Futurama lines, and this one actually has the one that I reference the most. I think out of any Futurama line, in case we end up watching more of these and I find another one that I didn't realize that I use a lot. But it's funny because I've been joking with D'Angelo about this line for like weeks, and then we ended up watching this, and now it's like I have to talk about the line. It's so you want the rest of the champagne? I think it's pronounced champagne. Oh God, no.
Such a good delivery too.
Yeah, it's every once in a while me and D'Angelo would just go, "Oh God, no."
That's like a classic Billy West noise too. Like,
yeah.
He kind of does. He's got a character in Disenchantment too, and he's the jester, and he always gets thrown out of windows and stuff, and he's always like, "Oh no!" It's like very similar vibe to that. It's pretty funny. Zap though is like a comedy factory. So many incredible lines, even out of the context of Zap Brannigan, that are so funny. Like this episode has when he's basically forbidding them from going to the planet, and they're like, why? We just need to go. Like, we need to go. It's going to be destroyed. We need to go save all of these animals. And he says, I don't pretend to understand Brannigan's law. I merely enforce it. Like, he doesn't even know what he's doing. It's like a simultaneous satirization of like bureaucracy, and also just a really funny character building line that showcases how dumb and mindless Zap Brannigan is. It's great. Oh man.
I think Zap is just like a insanely classic character that they nail like immediately. Like all of his nuances are there. Like, sure, he develops, but like you could throw this on in a sea of different Zap Brannigan episodes and he would feel exactly the same.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. He's probably the most consistently characterized from the beginning to the end. He was always right there. That's great. Let's see. I guess we should probably keep moving through. We've been talking for a while. And we're only 4 episodes deep, which I guess just shows, how much there is to talk about this damn show.
Right.
Episode 5 is Fear of a Bot Planet, which I don't know. This one feels a little forgettable to me. There's There's some
Yeah.
cool stuff in it. I think the robot planet idea is cool. There's some really good 3D shots, like of all of the robots, like in unison moving through each other. That stuff is pretty cool. Where it's like lines of the robots perfectly moving past each other.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I think of season 1, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, forgot about that one.
Yeah, nah, I'm the same way actually. When it came on, I was like, oh, okay. Is this one? Because it is one it's not even just one that I forget is in season 1. It's just an episode of Futurama that I just kind of forget.
Right.
Every once in a while. I appreciate the Public Enemy reference in the title. But I don't know. It is kind of because I think like I get what it's doing and I get what it's trying to say about Bender and his relationship with Fry and Leela, but I don't know. It is pretty forgettable, and it does have like they do something really sweet for him, and then he finds out at the end, and it's really nice, and it's still put together well. It's still a well put together episode of Futurama, but the laughs aren't as big. There's only one that stands out is the make sure you stay with the crowd so they don't see how raggedy you look. that's the one that sticks out.
I love that line. The thing that I like at the very end is once they're celebrating Robonica, they do the like snapshot ending where they take a bunch of photos of them celebrating.
Yeah.
And my favorite is that in the second to last photo, it's Bender like holding a broken bottle up to Fry's neck. and then in the next photo, they're all hugging again, but Fry's neck has a bunch of Band-Aids on it.
It's really funny. I got
so
a big laugh
funny.
out of me too. That's the thing about it, man, is that even the lesser episodes of the season, there's still like big laughs, and you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
There's some really funny stuff on the planet too. There's like pretty funny guest performance from Tom Kenny as that like other robot who's like, oh, looks like you got a leak there. you want a little dose of like piping hot resin, you know? A fun performance, and I like the whole like pretending they're not robots thing. That's pretty fun. And I guess I like the movie about like the danger of humans coming to like kill everyone is funny. Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it is funny though. It's like even the ones that are like they're forgettable, and then you start talking about it, and you're like, but there's some really funny stuff in it. It's still really good.
Yeah. The thing with the like they're watching the teen movie and the robot comes out and he's like, I'm gonna digest you with my organs, and he like opens his chest.
Oh yeah, my
it's
mighty
just like
organs.
fake organs. It's really funny.
But 106 is really good. We were talking about this earlier. Fish Full of Dollars.
Yeah.
One of my favorites of the season for sure. And I think what I like most about it is that it's hugely world building without leaving Earth. They do such a cool job establishing so many of these like new future earthly things through Fry's eyes, and then also introduce like a pretty fun story that never has to really leave the planet at all.
Right.
But there was one thing about this one, and that's because obviously Fry becomes rich from his bank account that had like 12 cents in it or whatever. And he buys all of this old like 20th century stuff, and he just like picks up his life where he left off. And I just so happened to have just bought like a TV with a VCR.
All right. Yeah,
and
you definitely did all of this.
And this is the first time I was watching this after having done that, and I was like, "Oh no, am I Fry right now, trying to like relive my past?"
That is exactly what you're doing.
I'm watching all these Simpsons videos I had as a kid, just like, oh, I just want to watch the ads in between them again.
That's exactly I didn't even think about it like that, man. That's exactly what's going on.
I know. It's like, I always thought it was a funny joke, him watching that stuff, but this time I was like, oh, it's so close to home.
This episode has the other joke that I find really funny just because it makes fun of something I grew up with. Is when he's it's not even really a scene. They just kind of cut back to him and he's watching Sanford and Son.
Yeah.
And the theme song plays, and it's just Fred Sanford saying, "Esther, you ugly," and then Fry like laughs way louder than he should. It's so funny because that's exactly what Sanford and Son is. It's just that
It's
back
so
and
good.
forth.
Yeah, I really liked all of that stuff. Where just like, didn't this one also have the Pepperidge Farm ad?
Yeah,
A lot of that stuff. Oh man, yeah, it's but this is a fun one. Like, it also introduces Mom, who's a great like overarching villain character.
It's crazy how they do it, because she's not like super antagonist yet, right? Like, I was so ready for them to go all in, but they don't really. I didn't realize that they don't do that as early. They show us, but they still kind of think she's sweet mom. Like, everybody else still kind of thinks like she's just like the sweet mom by the end.
That's my favorite. Is that's the whole time we can see that she's like undermining Fry, and like they literally steal his whole fortune. But at the very end, when he's just like, "I'm gonna eat these anchovies," and she's like, "Holy hell, you're gonna eat them?" And she's like clearly just shocked, and she leaves. And then as soon as she leaves, Fry is just like, "What a nice lady." It's so funny because we've just seen her like completely unravel his entire life, and he's like, "She's so nice." Oh, there's a dumb line. This is a dumb thing that I've watched this a million times, but this is the first time I ever noticed this. Is when he's trying to check out the balance of his bank account, and they like do his retinal scan and they don't have it on file. The other thing they say is, "We don't have your colonic map on file," which is that in this future that colonoscopies become like public information.
Yeah. It's like the equivalent to like your Face ID on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. It's just your colon.
Sucks.
It's so funny. Pretty gross.
Yeah, sick. It's pretty bad.
Oh, and then the idea of like ads and dreams. The whole idea of ads and dreams is so funny too. Like, it seems ridiculous, but then you have that scene where it's super brilliant, especially when you have that scene where Fry's like, no way, we didn't have ads and dreams. We had them on buses and on billboards and on milk cartons and bananas and on TV and in the movies, but not in dreams. No, sir. It's like, and it just kind of makes you realize, oh yeah, our whole lives are just advertisements. Like, we can't go anywhere without seeing an advertisement.
Yeah. Yeah,
if we had sponsorships, everywhere. This is where we would put a sponsorship right here.
Right. Please let us know. Squarespace, Talkspace, you can go right here. Right here in the middle of this Futurama discussion about capitalism.
All right. Well, My Three Sons, I think, is a pretty fun episode, like from a sci-fi aspect. This is the first time this is like the furthest they go from Earth in these first 7 episodes. And yeah, I feel like there's so many good sci-fi ideas in there. Just like the fact that it's a planet of 3 suns is really cool visually. Mm-hmm. And the idea that they're these water-based aliens is really interesting too. Apparently this was like a very early idea that Groening came up with, was what if the delivery boy went to deliver something and accidentally drank the Emperor? I'm like, wow, that's very specific for you to come up with that early.
That is very specific.
There's like a few lines in this. There's like a few aspects of this episode I think are really funny, but overall, like, it kind of over the years has fallen down like my list of. I feel like I loved this episode a lot when I was young, and it's kind of like become less impressive to me the older I've gotten.
That's crazy, because I feel the exact same way.
Really? That's so funny.
Yeah, because I think this is the first Futurama episode I remember seeing, like, as a kid.
Interesting. And
as time went on, I realized that my brain mixes it with the one where they go to Zoidberg's planet.
Oh yeah, yeah. Why must I be a crustacean in love? Yeah,
yeah. It's such a sick title. yeah. My brain mixes it with that one a lot. But I still love it. I still think it's really good. It was fun seeing it again. Just kind of like me forgetting a lot of the beats because, like I said, my brain kind of tied both of them together. I forgot that he like cries them out and stuff like that.
Right.
Which
this is
all
the
stuff I think is really good.
This was something I pointed out, and I did a recent Fry and Leela video, but this was the first instance, I believe, of them making either Fry or Leela think that the other one has died. And that happens like 15 times over the course of Futurama. It is like a recurring thing, sometimes multiple times in one episode, where they like flip it back and forth. Like, oh, Fry thinks Leela's dead. Leela thinks Fry's dead. Which is a really weirdly specific thing for them to do over and over and over again, all the way to the last episode. But it is like a pretty funny, it's a funny solution to that problem where, you know, they find out the Emperor is obviously still inside him and they're like, well, he's got to come out somehow. And, yeah, it's a good one. They just beat him up to get the Emperor out of him.
Right. And then like, I find it funny that they don't realize that the Emperor is out. Amy's just like, it's your turn.
Yeah.
He just kind of starts hitting him with the chair.
That's the ending beat, isn't it? Him beating him with the chair.
No, yeah, and I was so confused. I don't remember it ending like that. It does end like that.
That's so good. Oh. Episode 8 is one of my favorites of the season, though. I love A Big Piece of Garbage. I think A Big Piece of Garbage is so funny. Not only from like, I think the sci-fi premise is funny, but I also just think I like that this is kind of the beginning of them doing their environmental episodes. There's like almost every season has some pro-environmentalism episode. And this is like this is a good way to do a pro-environmentalism message that's still super funny, which is the idea of, and it also like kind of puts a spotlight on like the current level of consumption of our planet. Cause it's like, hey, this is your fault that this giant ball of garbage is flying towards Earth right now. And it's a funny way to do it. And it like kind of makes you think. It's like, oh yeah, I guess maybe I should recycle more.
Right. It does kind of get one thing I noticed, it kind of I don't think the word is meta, but the episode kind of stops for maybe a good 15, 20 seconds and kind of just has Fry go, yeah, this is my fault. It's like me and everybody else in the 20th century. If we just recycled, it's like, oh, okay. All right. I see what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They do kind of have that moment where it's a little heavy-handed, where they're like, oh yeah, this is your fault, audience.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is the first one where they have like a something that Fry has something to do with from the 20th century comes back.
Right. There's a couple this season and they do it a little more later.
And I think this is the first one where it's like, okay, this is like a problem that started because of Fry's generation, and now literally like a millennium later, like everybody has to deal with it.
Right. Totally.
I think that's really interesting. The next time they do it, it's like, it's not as serious by any means, but it's still, I do think that's really interesting.
They do have that one episode later. There is the episode later that's called Crimes of the Hot, though. That is literally just like, global warming is this. And they like explain it overly. Yes, I believe it was. And actually it's so thoroughly explains global warming through the animation that Al Gore used the clip in an Inconvenient Truth. He used that.
I remember because they showed us in my environmental science class in high school. And I was like, are we watching Futurama? What the hell are we doing?
That's so funny. This episode is also directed by Susan Dieter, who like, I just was looking into her, seeing that she directed this one. And she's like the first female director on The Simpsons, Futurama, Baby Blues, and The Critic, which is pretty cool. And she won an Annie for, I think, a season 2 episode of this show, which is pretty cool.
Okay. Cause I know Susie just because Susie directed like some like standout Simpsons. I know she did like A Star Is Burns, which
Oh,
is
I love
like
that
really good. That one is so I
Yeah.
watched that the other day. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like growing up on the Simpsons DVDs and listening to the commentary and hearing her talk, like was so like when I was watching the episode and her name popped up at the bottom of the screen, I was like, oh, it's always a pleasant surprise when you see names like hers. Like I get the same feeling seeing her name that I do when I see like Wes Archer's name.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm like, oh, Wes is here. Okay.
Yeah. Like it's a little, it makes you feel like, oh, I'm about to watch something that's probably quality. You know? It's a little assurance. Yeah.
Little seal of approval.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, I also love the smelloscope. This one introduces the smelloscope, which is, I think, the dumbest but funniest future technology in Futurama.
Yeah.
The idea that you would ever need to
the
smell something far away.
I love the drawing when he just kind of comes up with it on the fly, and he's like,
Yeah.
I think this is just me as a cowboy in the corner.
Oh yeah, that's right. I also liked that there was like a little bit of payoff to that too, because he like the whole thing he was presenting at that show was the death clock, and they are all kind of like, it better be better than the death clock you invented last year. He was like, oh, last year. And then they like kind of double down on that joke, because once they leave the symposia and they go to show the actual smelloscope, and they're like, you invented the smelloscope already? He's like, no, I remember I invented it last year. This is a good professor like episode too. They really I think this probably introduces Wernstrom for the first time.
It does.
And you really get to you like really start to see a little bit of Farnsworth's backstory, and the fact that while he is this like very impressive mad scientist, he's kind of the old laughing stock of the science community.
Right. I don't know, because I like this one. I do really like this one, but I always kind of I think because I like their relationship, like what their relationship became way later down the line, where they're like really at each other's throats, that
For
this
sure.
one just kind of, it felt really set up-y to me in terms of those two. Which is fair, because that's exactly what it is.
Right.
And that's not the episode's fault by any means.
Right.
But I don't know. This is definitely on my later half.
Oh, interesting.
On my list, yeah.
We'll get to these
Because there
rankings
are
at the end.
like
We'll have a
there are
discussion.
some really big laughs. There's the Eurectum joke.
Such a
It's
good
just
joke.
like it's so funny.
Uranus Erectum. It's so
Yeah,
good.
it's really funny.
Oh man.
But I don't know.
That's interesting though. That's because this one's very high on my list. So we'll definitely talk through our rankings at the end. 109 is I think an episode that a lot of people really love, which is Hell is Other
Yeah.
Robots. Which is a great episode. Very good episode.
Phenomenal.
It's super funny. Classic. It's like a classic for a reason. It's really funny.
Yeah.
The one thing though I did notice this time watching it, as great as it is, funny the whole way through, every act is so separate. Like it feels like each act has got its own thing happening, and they do naturally lead into one another, but there's
Mhm.
so little overarching elements to all three of those acts. The first act is like, oh, it's Bender on drugs. The second act is, oh, Bender's now on religion. The third act, oh,
Right.
Bender is now in hell. Which I think it works well, but it is interesting when you compare it to some other episodes that kind of feel a little more cohesive, even though I think it still works great for the story.
Yeah. I never thought of it like that, but it is kind of built like one of the films, right? Like
Right.
this is how you would structure a Futurama film that you would have to cut up in the episodes.
Totally.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, if this hadn't been a first season episode, this would have been a prime candidate for a Futurama movie.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's this one, right? It is this one that starts out with the Beastie Boys stuff.
Yeah, the Beastie Boys stuff is great.
It's like back in the year 2000, I had all 5 of your albums. He's like, that was 1,000 years ago. Now we have 7.
I
Then
like when Fry asked, yeah, Fry asked to
"Can I
borrow them.
and a few blank tapes. Like,
Yeah,
what the
it's
hell
so
is he-
funny. Oh, it's so good. The other thing I love, one of the other things I love is when Bender is jacking on. That the drug trip sequence is so funny and so
Yeah.
well animated. I love that shit. I kind of wish that Futurama had like done more. Like there's such cool trippy animation in Futurama in general. I'm kind of surprised they didn't like do more druggy trippy things. You know, I guess it was on network TV. Maybe that's what prevented them. But that's another thing that Disenchantment has done a lot over their 3 seasons so far is there's been like 4 drug trip sequences and they're all so cool. Like everyone is really awesome. And I guess that's because you have Netflix. You have the freedom to do what you want on Netflix there.
Yeah, that's true.
This is also like this kind of is one of the things that starts Bender's sort of like one of the weird things about Bender throughout the show is that he's always kind of like searching for meaning in some things. You know what I mean? Like, and this one isn't like, that's not really his primary motive. Like he's really just, he finds religion because it's a means to get himself off the drugs. So he's not really looking for meaning in the religion, but it is interesting that like this religious focused episode, they do focused around the robot. That's, I think, a funny idea in general. And they kind of do that a lot over the course of the show. Like even Godfellas, which is like obviously an incredible classic episode, but it's like very existential story about finding God, but it is all centered around a robot.
I think
a choice.
They might, I don't know. I think they might do that because it might make it a little, for lack of a better word, I guess it makes it a little more palatable that way.
Right.
If it's not coming from a human character, you don't directly internalize these things or, okay, they're talking about my God or, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. It could come across as a little preachy if it ends up being a human.
Right. And because you're making it Bender and because you're making it a robot, you get to hide a lot of things in like robot puns or jokes. It's like some people look at it like, oh, okay, this is a farce, and other people be like, oh, okay, they're saying something here.
Totally.
And I appreciate that they kind of introduce Bender as they do the joke where he's like, I don't have an addictive personality, which he clearly does. And you see how that affects him on like both respects, right? You see how it affects him with like the drug stuff, and then like when he gets off it, now he's addicted to something else. What he's addicted to is a positive thing, because it's making him a better person, but it is kind of affecting the people around him and everything like that.
Totally.
There kind of has to be some kind of medium, some kind of middle. He keeps teetering on one extreme or the other kind of thing. It's really interesting to see.
Totally. You know, honestly, now thinking back, even the pilot kind of set it up a little bit because you meet him and he's in the suicide booth. He's like, the whole beginning is like him being like, man, I was bending girders, but then I found out they were made for suicide booths and I just couldn't live with myself. Like that's pretty existential crisis to set up your robot character, which is pretty funny. Kind of started that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, I also this is a funny note from the commentary, was that apparently someone who worked at Rough Draft Studios wouldn't work on the episode because they were religious. They're like, I'm not going to touch this episode.
Oh, that's rough.
It's a rough draft. Oh man. God, good episode though. You got anything else stand out about this one for you?
We didn't talk about the song.
The song, yeah, or Dan Castellaneta as the Robot Devil. We didn't talk about either of those.
So good,
so good. One of the best side characters in the whole show. Definitely like one of the best guest voices in the show. Maybe the best one. But the song, the song is so good.
Yeah, the song is brilliant. They plant so many seeds. Like I was like, they do the fiddle contest thing, and you see how great he is with instruments, and it comes back
Totally.
way later.
Yeah, literally the
You would've
finale
forgotten
of
about
the
it.
original run. Like 4 seasons
Mhm.
later, they're like, oh yeah, he's he's a great musician. Those hands
Yeah.
play music well. Yeah, it's so like they just did such a good job. Like, and it's like hard. You can't say that was purposely set up, but that's just the sign of a good writing staff when they can go look back and pull those little details and make them connect back when they're
Mhm.
writing the new stories. And Futurama is just kind of really good at that overall.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
That's a good one. Then the next one is like kind of the first real just straight parody, which is A Flight to Remember, which is like the Titanic episode.
Right.
Which we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of its animation. But it's interesting. Like this first season has two that I would say are like, oh, this is a straight parody of something else. And that's Flight to Remember and then Fry and the Slurm Factory, the finale.
There's Mars University, but it's kind of half, right?
Yeah, that one's like the B story has the like
Is
has
all
the like
Animal
Animal
House.
House vibes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite part about that episode. But I think A Flight to Remember is a little I like it a lot. There's a lot of things I like about it. Especially I kind of like the whole Three's Company thing. Like that's a fun conflict of like, oh, Fry's got to pretend he's dating 2 different people. I feel like no matter where you set it, especially
when he's trying to figure out what to do next, he sings the theme song.
yeah, he's
It's
just
really
singing the
funny.
theme song. It's like it's so good. And then like I guess this is a pretty good Bender story. Like it's Bender and the Countess or whatever, but it does feel to me it felt like, oh, this is like, oh, they're just doing their Titanic, like this is their Titanic.
Yeah.
I think my biggest laugh in the episode though is the beginning, the cold open, when they're like, we're gonna go on the Titanic, and then they do all those music stings where they cut around to everyone's face. Like, sounds fun.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can go wrong. It's pretty good. Anything about this episode stand out to you? Anything you like?
Nah, like I do think it's a good episode. I think it's a funny one, just like the rest of these. It does have the line I talked about earlier that I thought was really sweet, where he's like, tell him that I died robbing someone or something like that.
Yeah, that's a nice
which
moment.
I think that's really sweet. I think that's really good. But yeah, I think one thing I've noticed in just watching these is just kind of like the straightforward parody stuff is always, I'm noticing that is it's like on my lesser end.
Same.
Just because I don't know, it's not even really the fact that they're doing parodies. It's just like ones that like a lot of animated stuff like got their hands on. And I do kind of want to be fair to this one though, because like this is 99, right? Like this is like
I think this
right
might have
after
been 99
Cameron.
or 2000. Yeah, this was very much like when they conceptualized this episode, Titanic was in the zeitgeist. Like that movie was
Right.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think I can like blame the episode because people did it a lot more after it. You know what I mean?
Fair.
It's not the episode's fault, but I don't know. I do think it's really funny. I do think it's nice. I like Bender and what's her name?
The Countess. I don't know if she had
Countess.
a name.
Yeah,
other than the
yeah.
Countess.
I like Bender and the Countess relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. They did some I do kind of like those little hints of Fry and Leela too. Like I think I mentioned this earlier, but
Mhm.
like there was no real like Fry shows interest in Leela. Fry starts to show a little interest in Leela in this one, but it's like it doesn't feel like overly romantic. It just feels like, oh, Fry's like kind of interested in Leela. And I think where it works is that like is once Leela starts to get a little jealous of Fry, because like Fry's pretending to have a relationship with Amy too. And and I really like that moment where they're looking at this like nebula that looks like a heart, and everyone is there like with someone else. Everyone has a date or whatever, and they're so close to kissing. It was the first time they did that fake out where they almost get them to kiss. I think they did it 2 or 3 times over the show. But it didn't feel like contrived. It felt Like it didn't feel like it was too soon because the situation made it feel natural. And it also didn't feel like they needed to immediately follow it up because the situation was like very circumstantial that led them to it, you know? It was like a good way. It was a good way to sort of plant those seeds without being like, well, we better start this Fry and Leela romance thing right now, you know?
Yeah. Nah, I definitely agree. Because I don't know, like they don't, like you said, they don't like leap forward into it. Like it really is kind of strategic. When you watch these in order, you'll realize how strategic they were with a lot of this stuff.
The other funny thing I noticed about this one is like there's a little bit of stuff that you can be like, oh yeah, they probably wouldn't have done that later. Like Zoidberg is just part of the like fancy party up in the fancier rooms of the ship. You know, like I think later in the show, Zoidberg for sure would have been on the Fiesta deck with with the rest of the crew, but in this one, he's like up there with Hermes and the professor. It's like it feels like with Planet Express in this first season, there's a little bit of a like higher ups versus the new people. Like Bender, Fry, and Leela are like these, like, oh, they're new to the company and they're kind of like lower on the totem pole. And then Zoidberg, Hermes, and the professor are like higher up. They get to stay in the fancy stuff. But like as the show went on, it was just, oh, the whole company is just kind of a failing company. Like there's no there's no real hierarchy to it. It's all a mess. Oh, and this introduces like the Kif and Amy thing, which in the commentary they said was just a joke. They were like, oh, it's just going to be a funny joke at the end. That ended up being like an ongoing romance for the whole show. Yeah, it's funny how that stuff pans out. How do you? All right, so speaking, we mentioned Mars University and the Animal House stuff. How do you feel about the episode Mars University?
Actually, we'll get it. I guess we'll get into the ranks a little later. But Mars University is actually like the last one. Like it's like at the bottom of my rank, mainly because the cartoons doing Animal House is like it's around a lot. Like, and it was around before this episode, and it's still here. And like,
that's true.
Yeah. So and that's only a portion of the episode, but that was part of the reason. Another thing is like, while I do think the stuff with Fry and the professor and Gunther,
Gunther,
I do think that stuff is like, it's really fun and it's really interesting. As far as like A stories go, I don't want to call it unfocused, but it did kind of feel a little hollow, I guess. It did kind of feel like, okay, so, because at first you just kind of have Fry meddling with him, and you're like, okay, so what direction are they going with this? And then they kind of introduce, like his internal feelings, like almost abruptly, right? Like they just kind of open the door, and he's like crying. And they like have to figure out what's going on. And I think that's what it is. I think the episode just kind of has like a weird focal thing going on that a lot of the other ones of this season don't.
I think I agree with you. This is also lower on my list, although I pretty much agree with you spot on about the A story. I think there's fun things about it. I think Fry going to college is fun enough. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really connect to the Gunther Fry storyline, even though there's funny beats in it, like all of these episodes. I do like the B story though. And I do know you're right. They do Animal House in a lot of things, but for some reason, the novelty of it, it's just like the novelty of it being robots is so funny to me. And also I think the Dean yelling robot house over and over is funny every time. It's funny every single time. And I like the regatta and like them like shockingly winning the regatta and the like rich frat boys who their rivals or whatever. It's I don't know. It's definitely low on my list, but that's what makes me laugh the most watching this episode is the B story.
There was I forgot which episode it was, but I did have something just about the season in general. Is that like they do a lot of things with the design that they just wouldn't do later, and I don't really know why, because they don't do the things that they do for specific reasons. Like every once in a while, Fry will just like not have his jacket on,
right?
And they would never do that later on. Like he would always have it unless it was for a reason. But like he takes it off, and like I don't remember which one it is, but in the first 3 minutes, Leela just has a lime green top on for no reason. Like I think it's literally just for the joke where Bender says, "Oh, you got a lime green top on." It's just for the
joke. Yeah, it's right. Totally for the joke. That was the only reason they did it.
Yeah, she has it on, but she has it on in the first scene, and then she leaves, and I was like, "Are they just not gonna? What's going on?" And then she comes back, and then that's when they do the gag.
Yeah, you're right. They do. I mean, I feel like that ends up being a thing with early seasons of animation, right? Where they're trying things out, and and when you look back on it years later, you're like, what the heck? Fry doesn't have his jacket. That doesn't make any sense. Like Fry always has his jacket. Yeah, that is interesting. That's an interesting observation. Episode 12 is interesting. When aliens attack. I don't love when aliens attack. There's things I really like about it. And there's, I think, one of the greatest lines in the history of Futurama in it. But this episode doesn't stand out for me. Like, I don't know. It doesn't do a whole lot for me.
What's the line?
It's a Brannigan, if you could believe it. It's, if we can hit the bullseye, the rest of the dominoes will fall like a house of cards. Checkmate. It's so good. It's like a perfect Zap Brannigan line.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's like, and this is, I guess we were talking about this earlier. This is one where it's like, oh, something Fry did in the past affects the future, comes back to haunt him 1,000 years later. And I guess I like the individual pieces of it, but like, I don't know. It felt a little meandering to me. How do you like this one?
I do like this one. I wouldn't say that I love it, but I do like this one a lot. I think I can't remember. I think it might be like mid tier almost for me.
Word.
Because I do like the concept of like the aliens being really, really into this show that like time literally forgot, right? That like no one, they don't even, it's not even preserved. Like they can't even they have to make up the final episode. And then like,
it's the Galaxy Quest thing, right? Like it's, have you seen Galaxy Quest? Yeah. It's, that is a good concept. That's true.
And they, I like all the stuff they do. Like when Fry, first of all, when Fry says it took an hour to write, so I thought it would take an hour to read. It's really funny to me.
That is really good.
But then when he just kind of lets them go off and like make their own finale, and Leela's just like, I don't want to be single anymore. I'm gonna get like, she does stuff that like, it's a finale, right? Like you would probably want that to happen, right? Like that makes sense, right? But then Fry's like, yo, what are you doing? Like you can't, like that's not, like they don't want that. You shouldn't do that. Like it's gonna confuse the audience and everything like that. I like all of that stuff. I think all that stuff is really funny.
Yeah.
And I think it
really is
smart.
Good. It is definitely, it's good commentary on like television, especially back then with like network television and how it's like very comforting status quo shit, you know?
Yeah.
But it is interesting that it was also a finale, and, you know, maybe the show Single Female Lawyer would end when she's not single anymore, you know, like that.
Right.
That does make a lot of sense for a finale. So it almost feels like while that they got a lot of good commentary in there about television in context, it's like, well, that would have been fine. That would have made sense. Like if that's how they ended it. Right. Yeah. It is funny to see them like try to make their own thing too. Like, and it was also just like Leela putting the second eye like next to her big eye to play the Single Female Lawyer is pretty funny.
Yeah. And then like when they kind of go like, yeah, we'll give it a C-, Fry just blames Zoidberg. I think that's the first joke like that, where like they just blame him.
Way to overact Zoidberg. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
That's true. Zoidberg like wasn't immediately the punching bag, but that is one of the early instances of them doing that.
Right.
The other line I really liked is when he's like, "Oh, maybe we can find like the old archived episodes," and you're like, "Oh, those were all destroyed during the second coming of Jesus." It's so funny. It's like that in this universe, Jesus returned and it was pretty inconsequential. Like everything just went on. Everything kept on going.
It's really funny. How did I forget that fast? Because I couldn't stop laughing when I heard it earlier. It's so funny.
It's such a good one. Oh man. So yeah, I guess overall, while it is lower on my list, there is some great stuff in it. And I guess that's kind of the for all of these, it's like, oh yeah, even if the ones that I don't love as much have so many things about them that I still love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of Futurama. Futurama just has great stuff through and through, especially these first 4 seasons. These first 4 are so good. Well, I guess we should talk about the season 1 finale then. We're coming up to the end. Fry and the Slurm Factory, which I guess you had just said you maybe don't like as much these straight parodies. And I think I generally agree, but I like this one. I think this is a pretty good straight parody. Yeah. They do enough fun stuff with it. And Willy Wonka is like so old that like the futuristic twist on it is big enough that like the Titanic thing is basically like, oh, it's the Titanic, but it's a spaceship. Whereas this one, it's like, oh, it's the candy factory, but it's like run by worms. And it's gross. And obviously that like the big reveal of what Slurm is just like a thing that it's like an iconic part of the show that was always imprinted in my brain from an early young age, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a cool location. I like the factory itself. I think the songs are funny. The Grunkalunka songs are really funny.
Yeah, because they keep stretching the rhyme.
yeah, exactly. And until Bender just tells him to shut the hell up.
Which is really funny. That read is really funny.
I also love when Fry is trying to drink the slurm out of the boat and he falls in and Leela goes in to save him. And they pop up, and then Bender just pops up too.
Yeah.
Like, Bender, what are you doing? He's like, everyone was doing it, and I just wanted to be popular. It's kind of another thing with Bender. It's like that's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time. Is like Bender is kind of insecure, and he's looking for acceptance in a lot of ways. You know,
he's like, and they plant that in through a joke.
Totally. Yeah. He wants to be perceived as cool. And so that's like why he jumped into the water. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like Slurm's Mackenzie too.
We were watching it earlier. The worm that was giving the tour, like I was talking to Man, and I was like, "Geez, can Billy West like try a little bit not to sound like Fry?" Like when they were talking back and forth, I was like, it's almost the same voice.
That's true. He does so many voices that it's like at a certain point you're gonna hear a little bit of him in there, but it definitely stands out when it's like, oh, they're talking to each other and they sound pretty similar.
It's like in King of the Hill where every once in a while they'll be at like a racetrack or something and you'll just hear like Dale on the intercom. And you know that's not Dale, but it's the same voice.
Yeah, this is a good one. It's overall a good one. I liked I like them trying to find the bottle cap. Also, the idea of the hidden bottle cap being in the cans of soda is so dumb, but so funny. Like, why is there a bottle cap in the can? That doesn't make any sense.
I like when Fry goes like, "Oh, another tooth." And he just spits it out into the bottle.
So gross. I like Slurm's Mackenzie just being like haunted by the fact that he has to party forever too. Like
Yeah.
he's not allowed to stop partying.
Which sucks. He's
I'm
like,
so
I'm gonna go
tired.
take a nap.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think as far as these straight parodies go, I think Fry and the Slurm Factory is a good one. Like it's a fun episode. It feels futury enough that even though it's a straight parody, like that they really made it its own. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny. It's a classic Futurama for sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess before we get to the rankings, like season 1, general thoughts. How do you like it? What do you think?
Man, it's amazing just being a fan of this show and like actually going back and watching all of these in order. Because you think back to these Fox cartoons and you don't really think of them. You think of like Family Guy, Simpsons, and even King of the Hill, where they kind of just made it up as they went along. But seeing like so much planning done so early on, right? Like it's really, really, it's amazing. And I think, again, it's not really the season's fault that it kind of feels this way, but it does. Each episode just kind of feels like a block that just kind of feels like a different building block to just kind of
Totally.
get this show ready to hold it up for what it like would eventually become. But even in doing that, like it's still relentlessly funny. It's still really sweet. Like, and all the characters are just like, they're really, you love them all like immediately. Like, you don't have to warm up to any of them. Like, even ones that don't get as much to do, like Hermes, which I'm realizing, I didn't realize how early the Limbo stuff was, but it's super
Flight to
early.
Remember.
And like La Barbara, she's super early. Like all this stuff
Yeah.
happens really, really early. And even Hermes has like one of my favorite lines in the 3rd episode where Amy is like, do you think Calculine's evil twin is gonna live? He's like, I don't know. It's so sad.
It is funny how much more Jamaican he sounds in the first season. Like it feels like he's really leaning into it. Like the line I really noticed it was when he says Limbo champion. You know, it's when he says champion. But man, the Limbo stuff it's such a weird choice for that character, but it's so funny. It's
right.
And I like that it came back over and over and over again throughout the show.
Yeah, and it's every time I see the Limbo stuff, I immediately think of Barbados Slim. So I was expecting him to show up, but he didn't. But still, because he's not till later. But
I can't remember how late he shows up.
Me neither.
I feel like it's later. Yeah, I found that like as I get older, I find a lot of these. I start to feel a lot of nostalgia for these season 1s of a lot of these adult animated cartoons that I maybe didn't have when I was younger. There's just like a charm to them. Like I rewatched season 1 of King of the Hill recently. I've always like in the last few years, I've really grown to love the first season of The Simpsons, even though it's so different than what came after it. But I feel like with Futurama, I feel that way. And there's definitely that like nostalgic pull and charm that draws me to it. But more so than any of those other shows, like this first season of Futurama both has those charms and really does a great job establishing what this show is and how it's going to work. And it feels so seamless. Like they were still clearly figuring it out themselves and it wasn't always like home runs, but you see everything that works in later seasons planted in these episodes. And, you know, they kind of are able to cultivate those seeds that they planted more fruitfully later. But it feels like they really just within these 13 episodes honed in on how, you know, like the show's potential, like you could really see the show's potential in these first 13 episodes. And it establishes all of these characters really thoroughly and really well. It makes you laugh the whole time, and it never feels like a completely different show. Even if there's things here and there that are a little off compared to the later seasons, it feels like Futurama through and through. And it's honestly I think it's just one of the best examples of a season 1 out there in at least in adult animation. especially like that pilot. I think we mentioned this earlier, but I think that pilot is one of the best pilots that exists. It's really good.
It's hard to get better than that. Like just in its structure and how it introduces you not only to the world, it gives you the world and it gives you all three main characters like motivations that stay with them throughout the whole run. Like it's insane how like well they pulled that off, but you get everything you need to know about Fry, Leela, and Bender, and it doesn't feel like it's shoving all that information to you. Totally. And it introduces, like, I can't even, it's hard to now, but just trying to put yourself in the mindset of somebody seeing the show for the very first time and seeing all the stuff that they throw at you. They throw a lot of stuff at you and it all just, it happens naturally. Like they just kind of run into the Hall of Heads, right? Like, and you're expected to buy that. Like even people that were already dead and like they are that now they have heads, but then later on in the season Fry tries to buy like what was it, Elephant Man's bones or something like that. Like
right.
So it's like he doesn't have a head. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's just a prime example of like how to start a show. And weirdly, like Futurama had such a weird life cycle on Fox. You know, it only lasted those 4 production seasons. I guess they stretched it out into 5 broadcast seasons. But, you know, Fox just never appreciated the show the way it deserved to. You know, I think they were expecting the Jetsons and they got Futurama. And it's a shame because obviously there was a demand for the show. Obviously there was an audience for the show, considering it got canceled and resurrected 3 times. And, you know, as soon as Adult Swim, you know, I guess Fox had a habit of doing that because they also canceled Family Guy, which is now still running, you know? So, yeah, it's interesting. And I, overall, like season 1, I think it's really, really impressive show and, sets it up beautifully.
Nah, I definitely agree. I don't know if there's another first season quite like this one that just
I can't think of one.
Everything is just like even the lesser episodes, right, are just the building blocks. Like even like something like Mars University, it's like you still get Amy's parents out of that. You still get like like where she comes from, and you know what I mean? Like there's still a lot of stuff Hermes that you get from it.
And then even in A Flight to Remember, you get the Hermes backstory. They sprinkled it all in throughout the whole thing. Like by the end of the first season, we kind of know Amy's backstory. We know Hermes' backstory. We don't quite know Zoidberg's yet, but that comes early in season 2. But pretty much and then we get that backstory for Farnsworth with like sort of his, you know, being a professor and everything. And with the other mad scientists, they do a great job sprinkling these things throughout without making them like it never feels like, oh, here's the professor episode, here's the Hermes episode, you know? It's all very well integrated into the show itself. Should we do these rankings?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll go first. I'm gonna go bottom to top.
Cool.
13, When Aliens Attack. 12, Mars University. 11, A Flight to Remember. 10, Fear of a Bot Planet. 9, My Three Sons. 8, Love's Labor's Lost in Space. 7, The Series Has Landed. 6, Space Pilot 3000. 5, Fry and the Slurm Factory. 4, I, Roommate. 3, Hell is Other Robots. 2, A Fishful of Dollars. And 1, A Big Piece of Garbage.
Wow, so there's a portion where our lists like match up identically.
No way.
Yeah. That's why I started laughing. All right. So I have 13, Mars University. 12, A Flight to Remember. 11, Fear of a Bot Planet. 10, A Big Piece of Garbage. 9, A Fishful of Dollars. 8, When Aliens Attack. 7, My Three Sons. 6, Love's Labor, Lost in Space. 5, Fry in the Slurm Factory. 4, I Roommate. 3, Space Pilot 3000. 2, Hell is Other Robots. And 1, The Series Is Landed.
Nice. Good list. I like how different our lists are too. Like we got those chunks that are the same.
Right.
But this was a hard one for me because pretty much everything 1 through 7 are like I love. I really love numbers 1 through 7. And it was like looking at the list, I'm like, oh, it bums me out to see The Series Is Landed and Space Pilot 3000 in the middle. But I just think it's just such a, like, there's so many strong episodes in this first season. I was like, well, I still like them. And I think if, in the grand scheme of a Futurama ranking, those are still really high on the total list.
Yeah.
But yeah, they landed in the middle for me. Let's talk about a big piece of garbage, though, because that's our biggest disparity. Yours is 10,
It is.
right?
Mine's is at 10.
And mine's
Yours
at
is
number
at
1. And I don't know if that's a lot of nostalgia I have for that episode or what. But I loved A Big Piece of Garbage. I don't know. I think that premise is so funny. The idea, I think the whole time, the whole episode keeps me laughing with its sci-fi stuff. Like the from the death clock to the smelloscope is, I think, hilarious. And then I love the sequence where they just start making garbage, where Fry's like, I got to teach you guys how to make garbage so that we can destroy this ball of garbage. I love that sequence. And like, there's that really great transition cut where they're showing the newspaper of like telling you how to make garbage, and they're just being launched out the window into the street. They're not going out to anyone. And then there's so many like small moments. Like I like it when I think the idea that the professor put the clock on upside down is so funny. When she's reading it and she's like 6H minutes. Like, what does that mean? It's so good. And they got that fun Simpsons reference with the Bart Simpson dolls, because there's so much Simpsons merch in the world. And then even this, like the dumb small stuff, like Fry going to push the launch button and missing.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah. That is, I forgot that happens, and that is really funny. He says, "Whoops,
whoops." Yeah, it's just like that tension. It's a good tension cutter. Yeah, that's funny though. I mean, yeah, I think A Big Piece of Garbage is one of my. It's my favorite of the first season, but I guess that just kind of speaks to how good this show is. That
because like you see, like you explaining it, like I'm laughing the whole time. Like it is, it's still a super funny episode with like really, really like real fun gags. It's just, what do I have it under? See, I got it under A Fistful of Dollars, which I kind of think I might not be being fair. That might be a nostalgia thing, because that's one of the episodes that like I would watch often, because it has the Sanford and Son. It just doesn't have the Sanford and Son bit, but it has so many really funny bits in it that I love. It even has the when he finds out that he has $4.3 billion and he just kind of like foams at the mouth and faints. It's like really funny. And you don't see him hit the ground. You just kind of see Leela and Amy's eye just like follow him when he hits the ground. Like,
that's funny too, because you have A Fistful of Dollars at 9, and that's my number 2. We both like those two. I have at the top, and yours are pretty low. That's pretty funny. I think but like I can't argue with your number 1 choice either. Like A Series Is Landed is so good. And Ken Keeler is such a good writer. Like they obviously had him do every series finale Futurama ever had, which was 4. But yeah, like that's the thing, is like, if you argued with me about A Series That Landed, I'd be like, yeah, you're right, I should move it up on my list. You know, like you're totally right.
I think The Series Is Landed, because I think like we said, I think Space Pilot is like one of the best pilots like I've ever seen in general. But I think The Series Is Landed is like one of the best second episodes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time people kind of hit the pilot and then they go, all right, we said everything. Let's just go. Let's just tell a normal story now. But here they're still kind of like, nah, you just met everybody and you didn't meet everybody yet. So let's still try to settle our feet. We'll go to a distant land or whatever. But it's still someplace that we know. It's still the, it's still like the moon. It's still a place that we know and we could take Fry there. 20th century guy. Everybody wants to be on the moon. Like it's handled really, really smartly. Just like how they kind of, because even when they go, right, they don't see aliens. There's just a guy with the robots. Like they kind of ease you in the whole run. It's really brilliant the way they do that.
And they do have a lot of good jokes. Like obviously, I love the farmer and his robot daughters, and also just like the recurring whalers on the moon gag is hilarious. That's so good. Yeah. Even just the way they go to the moon, where Fry's like, can I do the countdown? And before he's even gotten 3 seconds into the countdown, they're at the moon already. It's so good. It's so funny. Who knows? Maybe it's like ranking these is hard. There's like definitely a recency bias too, where I'm like if I watched through these episodes again, I'm sure my ranking would change again.
Probably.
It would just, damn. Well, that was great, man. This was a good conversation. I think this is going to work.
I think it's going to be a really great podcast. And I think
so too.
I think MeUndies, Squarespace, all you guys, you know what I mean? You have the floor right here as well.
Yeah, man. We got room. We got room on this podcast for multiple sponsors. It's a long podcast so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the thing we have to do, I guess we should probably throw a call to action out. I mean, we should ask if you're listening to this and you want to hear more. We want to hear what adult animated shows you most want us to talk about. We've got a huge list of stuff we want to talk about, but we also want to know what you're expecting and what you would really most be interested in. I'm sure we don't have it all worked out yet because we're doing this ahead of time, but I'm sure there's a lot of places you could subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast, rate and review, all that stuff. I think we're going to have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We're excited. We want just give us your feedback. Let us know what you thought about this first one. What is there anything you want to hear more of? You want less of? Did you like the structure? Do you like us? Should I get replaced after the first episode? Let us know.
Should I get replaced?
The next episode is going to be 2 new hosts.
Right. It's neither of us.
And we also are at some point, we're going to bring on guests too. Like we want to get our rhythm together before we bring on guests.
Right.
But we definitely intend on having guests on here. We got a lot of friends in the cartoon community who want to talk about a lot of these shows, and we're excited about that. So the plan is over the next month, the first 4 seasons of Futurama. So if you want to follow along, make sure to watch. And we've been talking about, I guess we were floating the idea of maybe Mission Hill after that as like a little 1 season off situation. But yeah, we're thinking stuff over. So let us know how you feel. Tariq, you got any sign-offs you want to say?
Nah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Just let us know. Like, cause we tossed around Mission Hill. We tossed around a bunch of stuff, just trying to figure out like where we were going to take it and everything like that. And even the whole season, just doing 1 season thing was just so like, if we ended up wanting to talk about The Simpsons, we weren't going to pick a Simpsons season and do 26 episodes scattered 26 weeks. So like, yeah, nah.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, we talked about if we did ever cover The Simpsons, like it's not like we could just do all of it at once. We're not going to do 35 weeks of The Simpsons, even if we did it 1 season at a time.
Which so I don't know if I would be. I don't know if I could handle that.
I couldn't, man. There's no way. Honestly, I don't think I would even. I didn't even want to do it for Futurama, and there's only a few more seasons after these Fox seasons. But I want to.
Right.
I'm down to live in that world for a month and then move on to something else and go back to it later. But there's reasons, it feels like we can have reasons for these miniseries. With Futurama, we can do the Fox seasons first, and then we'll cover the movies, and then we'll cover the revival seasons, that kind of stuff. So
right, Futurama is segmented enough to where we can kind of hop around and pick. Yeah.
Simpsons, we talked about, gets difficult because we could do showrunners at first. We could do they switched off two showrunners every 2 seasons, but then once you get to Al Jean, you got 25 years to cover. Yeah. But we're excited. So let us know what you think, rate and review, do all that business, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.